Oh, let's see. Uh, Let me check my audio. Checking the audio. Cade, what's up, man? Hey, can you hear me, sir? Can you hear me? All right, let's see. Audio wise, I sound good. I just checked it. Loud and clear. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Alrighty. Jim, how you doing? Welcome to the wild, wild world of tech. Boy, I got some news today. Boy, you would think that the news gods opened up and rained down upon thee. Let's see. All right. First, I'm gonna give you the ways to contact the channel if that's what you like to do. Maybe one day in the future. He said, "Please, no EV crap." Not today. Not today. There's nothing really new that's popping up. Um, I didn't see anything new, so I will not be talking about it today. But just know that it can happen at any time. Just know that it can happen at any time. Let's see. Ways to contact the channel. If you have particular stories that you want covered, the free 99 way is obviously through Twitter. I'm also looking to probably set up a Blue Sky account. Also, if I have a little bit more time, since I do Uber full time and then YouTube part time. I don't know if I'm at that sophisticated yet, but if you are curious to get like something up on the channel, talked about, observed, maybe you have this particular tech fetish. We all do. You know, my audience doesn't like my EV crap. What can I say? But electric vehicles are cool. I like them. But if you have something that you particularly like to work on or want brought up to the channel, Twitter/X, I will never call it X at first, is the best way to do it. Then you add me, Keon81, and the channel at sign at the same time. Let's see. That is the free 99 way of doing it. If I end up incorporating Blue Sky into it, I haven't 100% decided on how I'm gonna end up doing it. I'm probably gonna end up doing just a channel only and not really move my own self all the way over there. The other way is through the membership. Membership is going to allow you deeper access to the overall channel, if that's what your liking is. And then the other way that I've been actually trying to figure out how to do is through super chats. So obviously, when it comes to super chats, that is totally voluntary. I would greatly appreciate anything that is given, but I also think that people do speak with their dollars also. So given the fact that people can speak with their dollars, and I would like to hear your voice also, I'm doing some trial run experiment with starting with super chats and then super chats and super stickers depending on your liking, but you can also do it that way. And the threshold is going to be able to get a link to the actual channel and speak your mind and come on live, because I use Google Chat, which is universal on both Android and iOS, which is why I like using it. Jim says he has coins, not dollars. Must be the Bitcoin. But the through the super chat, so anything that's above $15, you automatically will get a link to the channel to be able to say something. Because more than likely at that price, I think that you probably have a lot to say. And typing it out on the screen for me to read, I think that's kind of stupid. At any moment, I'm gonna try to get to everybody's chat if I possibly can. But if you got a long paragraph, it's gonna be more advantageous for you to just go ahead and speak it out, and in that way I can hear the person's voice and go at it from there. So that's what I'm working on. No biters of just yet, but I'm working on it. It requires this person to super chat, do a super chat offering, and then email the channel. And then once you get the email, then I can email you back the link to the room to briefly come on and talk. So that's how I'm end up doing it. Because everything has to go through Google. That means that your channel name that you have that you're watching on has to match all the way through, or you're not going to be able to get on. So Jim, he said he'll be right back. But that's particularly how I'm looking to set it up. It's a little bit convoluted, but it's the safest way of doing it for me personally. But those are the multiple different ways to be able to contact the channel. This evening, we are working with Google, Comcast, cloud gaming, and my beloved favorite other thing outside of EV is cellular. I have a whole cellular segment that I'm going to end up doing, which is going to be kind of fun. Let's see. The cellular segment is going to be, I'm not going to say it's going to be long, but it requires multiple phases in what's going on. But let's see. Where's my first story? Cade, he says, don't tell me Google Stadia is coming back. Leave that in the ground where it belongs. Well, hey, sir, understand, it shouldn't have never died. But that is because I'm a bit biased to it. I'm a bit biased to that, sir. It's a very sensitive subject, per se. It's very sensitive. But starting with cellular, where's my story? Where is my story? We're going to set it up like this. So 6G, learning from the mistakes of the past Gs. So learning the mistakes of the past OGs, of course. If you follow the cellular industry, you start seeing a particular pattern starting to show itself from one generation to the next, from 2G to 3G, from 3G to 4G, 4G to 5G. And every generation of cellular, you end up learning how to deploy a little bit differently, a little bit better. drastic changes in different generations have always occurred due to the fact that technology advanced a little faster. But I think that we're going to start getting to a place where the G's are not going to matter. I think they're just going to merge in together. One, due to the fact that consolidation of cellular carriers, we're seeing U.S. Cellular getting bought all out, so being picked apart by the carcass from all the rest of the carriers. But now we're also starting to see a new G on the horizon, which at the rate they've been doing it was every 10 years. But that's a lot of spending. And right now, I don't think there's a big appetite for spending right now on cellular networks when 4G, we never really even hit peak 4G until about now. Until we actually started deploying 5G, did we start realizing the full potential of 4G, which is very strange. So we're talking about what, 13 years in? Yeah, I would say about 13 years in before we hit peak LTE and 4G. And then, at the same time, we were doing different companies were doing different things. T-Mobile jumping out ahead of everybody with the merger with Sprint caused them to kind of leapfrog everybody real quickly. It depends on what position you might take or look at this from. Are they ahead? Are they behind? Are they really ahead? Do we really know? Let's see. Kay says, I remember when LTE came out and everyone went, this is the same exact thing as 4G LTE, LOL. Yes, because LTE was the next G. It was 4G. It was a different architecture that was separate from 3G. 3G was dabbling in data, but 4G was going to be an all data network, which is why you don't really see much difference between 4G and 5G. The only difference that you really truly see is network access, which is why these generations are going to be almost negligible in the next couple years. I mean, going from 5G to 6G, we probably wouldn't even have anything that really stands it out as much due to possible deployment, the spectrum allocations that will end up making it possible. So learning from the past, I agree with this article and then I disagree at the same time, which is kind of funny. You could say that's a weird thing, but in certain pitfalls, you could say that, hey, was non-standalone and standalone a good thing? It addressed that in this article. Here, let's see. So the NSA problem, I don't necessarily see that as a problem. I saw it more as a stepping stone. It allowed you to experience 5G in the rawest form, but at the same time gave the carriers a platform to kind of build off of and work behind the scenes to start deploying. Now, T-Mobile has been going at it gangbusters, and then AT&T and Verizon have kind of been dragging their feet. So I don't know how this is going to end up playing out for the major carriers at this point, but right now we're seeing a separation in the carriers, which I think is good. It used to be just the AT&T / Verizon show. Now it's kind of different to watch. It's kind of different to watch them struggle per se. I don't necessarily say you can say they're struggling, but you could also say that they're not really pushing it very hard to migrate towards the next G as fast. But the 3GPP standard, it does allow for different ways to deploy your network, which was a problem for 3G, going from 3G to 4G, because it was a total slice. Like, you were abandoning a lot of technologies that maybe 3G had some to offer and totally going to a whole new architecture. So going from 4G to 5G allows you to kind of utilize your existing 4G hardware and RAN, but you can also upgrade on the back end, which I think that NSA, going from NSA to SA, was a great idea. In this article, they say it's not. That's from light reading. I think that it was inevitable that you're going to have to start finding ways to make it easier for carriers to come up with ways to migrate easier. And that was always the problem. Doing a full network build and then all of a sudden you got to turn the lights on, that's kind of stupid. But if you can allow them to do it in phases, the deployment was going to always be easier. Now, one of the reasons why I started with this article was due to the fact that the different generations of cellular is starting to show itself and lend itself in not very advantageous ways. So let's pull up the next one. This might be controversial for some people. I have stood on the opposite side of the railroad tracks on this, and this is another story from light reading. And Raider John. Let's see, Starlink whipped T-Mobile's light years beyond the other two. Starlink is good in certain use cases, but like transportation wise, I would say while driving around, like in open area, right now, coverage is still going to be the hardest thing to really do. And Starlink has that in spades right now. I mean, they're broadcasting satellite from space. I'm just saying. But once you start getting into the city, you do have to really concern yourself with angles and, possible interference from different other entities like buildings and trees and different other things. So one has better strengths in one area, another one, like Starlink, has better strengths in wide open spaces. I think what Starlink offers, a Starlink Mini that you could put inside of your car. So if you're driving on a cross country trip, you get, you still have service, which is always going to be good. Eventually what's going to happen with Starlink when T-Mobile and Starlink can finally broadcast from space PCS? Will Starlink Mobile be a thing of the past, or they're going to be more sought after? These things are still being hashed out. It's difficult to really find out exactly where they're going to be coming in at. But Cade says, I agree. Back in 2020, 2021, millimeter wave was the gold standard, but then the carriers just dropped their toolboxes and said, I'm done, and gave up. The biggest downfall of the 5G era. It was the biggest, I think it was an ambitious, foretold footprint, right? It had a lot of promise, but sometimes promising and making things actually work are a chasm like the Grand Canyon. So like in this article here, one of the problems with 5G was the introduction of millimeter wave. Now, I know I'm probably going to get a lot of pushback because of this, but millimeter wave, as fast of speed that it is, it really has not done as much as I thought that it might end up doing. And one of the reasons why is due to the fact that it's only been picked up by one carrier, but even that has had limited viewpoints when looking at it. Cade, yeah, it had a lot of potential. It had a lot of potential, but the problem is deployment. You got to be realistic with certain things. You know, one of the reasons why I bring this up is because of how hard it is to actually deploy. Macro sites were already kind of hard to do because you gotta seek approval and you gotta, you know, hope that the Karens of the world don't hop out and be like, yo, that looks ugly. Why are you putting this behind my yard? You know, you need this cell site for coverage, and they go, it looks so ugly. So you had to deal with that. Now there's reports where Verizon is being sued in smaller towns trying to put millimeter wave up, and people are like, yo, they just don't want those things on their street corner. And nobody really talked about what it would take to deploy millimeter wave, which is why the plummeting of the value has been coming up more and more. We're talking about they spent billions of dollars, not multi billions, but just enough for you to go, oh, that's a nice little chunk of change. But you're starting to see entities like T-Mobile finally go, all right, cool. We can't really meet the build out the requirements because it's going to require a build out crazy. Look at it from this standpoint. If follow me down the Yellow Brick Road, if you were going to build millimeter wave right, understand what it will take to do it right. Because not oh, it's on a pole here, it's a pole there, it's a pole everywhere. No. To do it correctly, which means that millimeter wave would have to be standalone by itself. That means that your phone literally hops from one millimeter wave node to the next as you're moving around. To do it the right way, you would have to have a millimeter wave deployment as dense as your street lamps in your local town or city. That's the only way to do it. No mid-band fallback, no low-band fallback. We're talking about just millimeter wave usage only, direct line of sight. You would literally have to be on every street lamp in your local city. And that's just for on the ground. As you're driving around, it probably might even be more dense depending on how they end up deploying it. That is a lot of nodes. We're talking about millions of nodes in just one city alone. Where do you get the money for it? That's what it's going to take to actually deploy millimeter wave correctly, where it's a standalone entity, not a byproduct of just, hey, we can give you a lot of speed real quickly. You could do it inside of a movie theater or a sports arena where people are not moving around a whole lot. You can broadcast millimeter wave from atop of the Raptors, but really you do have your indoor DAS as picking up the slack for, being able to talk back to the cell phone. Remember, your phone has to talk back to said entity, not just receive, but send. That's what I don't think a lot of people realize what it would take to actually deploy millimeter wave on a scale that it is just standalone, where you're doing phone and voice and data, all that is happening underneath just millimeter wave. And Verizon might be able to do it in certain places, but it's unrealistic to be able to do it nationwide. They would literally bankrupt their whole network build just in one city. I mean, you might be able to get away with it in, like, let's say New York City, but for real, the path to doing it is too much. I mean, that's one of the reasons why you saw T-Mobile give up millimeter wave, which made the whole industry freak out because it was never heard of before. But if you don't see promise in it, why keep pursuing it? That's kind of how I look at it. I mean, I'm not saying that I totally 100% agree with what T-Mobile's done, but if you don't see it being working, why keep going? Why even try to fake the funk and try to keep going? Which is why you're starting to see the value of millimeter wave fall. And the funny thing is this is an American problem. In other countries, they didn't even touch it. They didn't even try to touch millimeter wave. And then on top of that, we're talking about the next G, the next generations. We're talking about 6G. They're talking about terahertz. The antenna is going to have to be next to your hip for it to be viable. I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, we're talking about next to, like, sitting next to you almost. You can get a lot of data very quickly. We're talking about gigabytes on top of gigs on top of gigs. But the deployment is unrealistic. We're talking about if you want to deploy terahertz, every seat in a stadium would have to be an antenna. That way the antenna is right there next to your phone to provide service to you. These are the deployment problems that you have to also look at, which is why midband has been so sought after, because it bridges the gap between functional speed and coverage. So, like, if you're going to go back and read this article and like reading, I welcome that we can have a broader conversation. But you also see the reason why this is being devalued and the plummeting costs of millimeter wave because of this next one right here. Hold up. So I know people have heard. If you heard of this has been something that's been popping up lately. CBRS. Why would the likes of Verizon, AT&T, cable codes, and other entities push so hard to make CBRS higher power? They see the better potential in the 3 gigahertz range for network access and speed being in CBRS than they do millimeter wave. I mean, Verizon has some CBRS deployments in different places. Here in DC, they do, but I think a lot of that stuff they get from Comcast in this area, in my area. But the problem you run into is now that legislation is going to end up changing CBRS power requirements. Oh, hey John, I'm running solo, man, running solo. But with CBRS power requirements, you're going to start seeing a lot more drive to end up getting CBRS versus, I would say, millimeter wave, because more mid-band that you can put on air means more potential for coverage, which means less build, which means macro towers can be populated with CBRS, not millimeter wave. So these are just one of the nails in the coffin, I think, that is really driving the plummeting of millimeter wave, even underneath Verizon. I mean, here in DC, they have not really build out more millimeter wave as much as I thought they will end up doing. They do have them on poles, but the expansion has almost ceased. I don't have documentation of this, but I do drive around a lot and I don't see new sites coming up, or like when I'm driving around, I don't see the poles. My connection to millimeter wave is not increasing. So only in hot spots like the convention center, maybe near the mall, different places where a lot of people might congregate at, is when I might see millimeter wave, but I don't see it outside of that. But CBRS is on the rise, especially I think if it ends up becoming higher power, I think you might even see millimeter wave take a bigger back seat and get relegated to the trailer being pulled behind the car. So these are my thoughts. Feel free to, come up with yours, post them below in the comment section. I'll be happy to read it and comment on them. Oh, let's see. What's the next one? Next. All right, so Cade, you were kind of right about Stadia, but we're talking about Xbox, sir. So let's pull this one up. Cloud gaming defeats the whole purpose of an Xbox handheld. I do agree with this. The introduction of handhelds into the market has only started to skyrocket. And because they're starting to skyrocket, you're starting to see different vendors coming out with them. So I have the Lenovo Legion Go, but then you also have, the ROG Ally. You got a couple of different other ones that are on the market. So yeah, basically, I mean, Stadia was ahead of its time. It was way more advanced. Xbox played the longer game, which they, technically speaking, they learned from their mistake when they went head up against Sony and told everybody that you're going to need to have an internet connection to play games. And then Sony trumped them by showing, hey, look what it takes to share your game. And they just hand it over to your friend. That made the future of gaming has always been direct to consumer. It was always going to head in that direction. The problem is how you decide to play the game. And Xbox is playing this game a whole lot different than Sony, which is why I've been gravitating more towards PC gaming than I have consoles. I mean, I barely play my Xbox now. I'm more on Steam than I am on anything else. Being on Steam has been a whole lot easier. On my Lenovo, I could transition between the same game on my laptop and onto my handheld. So it cloud saves. And because it cloud saves, I could be on either one. Oh, let's see. He said, I'm not a fan of handhelds because most handhelds have the bad battery life, high latency, low performance. And look at Nintendo Switch 2 leaks in the first one. See, here's the thing. I think that, you are more of what I call a high level gaming purist. I'm right there with you, right? I'm right there with you. But the problem you're missing is the casual market is the target. They already have you. I remember you playing Rainbow Six Siege. You are already in the gaming industry. You can only monetize you and me, but so much. You want to expand the market. Well, hardcore gamers are not where you want to expand in. You want to expand into the more casual gamer, the more laid back gamer, and the Nintendo Switch did that. It showed, it literally showed that casual gamers do care. They just want something to pick up real quick, play, and then put it down, right? Reader John says, I'm more of a PlayStation guy. I used to be a PlayStation guy, sir. Sony is a dead end until they decide to embrace the more open manner. They're still closing themselves off, which is one of the reasons why it's weird to hear that Xbox is going to do a handheld. Because if you do have one of these handhelds like I do, you could put Xbox Cloud gaming on my Lenovo and it runs perfect. You can do these things and you would never tell the difference. The problem you run into is how do you bridge the gap between somebody like myself who is, you know, head over heels in love with, you know, graphics and stuff, and K2. I know that I've talked with him. He said, I'll be putting this away. The Nintendo Switch 2 is rumored to have a 720p LCD screen. Yes, Nintendo has never really been at the forefront of innovation when it comes to hardware. They will do what, you know, 4 generations back what we're doing, just so they can be, you know, get into the hands of kids. That's kind of technically what they're doing right now. But here's the thing. The Lenovo Legion Go, which I can speak on this one, I literally get 1080p gaming. I'm playing Battlefield 2042 on my Lenovo Legion Go. And I can literally take that Legion Go and I can plug it into my hotel room if I'm on the go. I can plug it into a friend's place and play it somewhere else. Same game, same handheld, it's able to play. And here's the crazy thing, they're only going to get better. Which is why I don't think enough people really realize this. And Cabe, you're gonna have to look into it. Let's see, Reader John says Nintendo hardware is garbage, but that catalog game is still good. Yes, but here's the problem. Nintendo's catalog of games are only as good as the competition that's around them. And really, a lot of their third-party games don't make it. It's their first-party games like Nintendo, like Mario Kart, and Legend of Zelda. Their first-party games is what carries the Nintendo Switch line. And that's one of the reasons why you might end up seeing Nintendo getting bought if handhelds become more powerful, because this is the last area for Nintendo to live in. Cade says, at this point, just switch over to a game development company and stop making consoles. That's not going to happen. There's a lot of people that you still access by making consoles. That's just the name of the game. The thing is as you make gaming more accessible, do you gain more market value? So like the rise of handhelds, like, you know, my Legion Go, they're only going to get more powerful as the chipsets get more powerful. As if you follow my channel, I was talking about, what is it? I'm talking about Qualcomm's. We're moving the movement to ARM. ARM shows more promise. Look at Apple. Apple, you can start gaming on Apple computers now because ARM is becoming more valuable, and it's becoming a idea now because it's easier to get a hold of. You could video edit on ARM now. These things were harder to do because ARM wasn't as powerful, but now with the introduction of handheld gaming, portable, smaller form factors are becoming more powerful, you're starting to be able to do more. And once you start able to do more, guess what you start bringing in? Casual gamers. And that's always the push. Casual gamers is always the push. Let's see. Cave says, I got a Switch, and I swear to God, when I play a Lego game with two people, it drops from 30 frames to running like a pinball game. Okay, so but see, that's what I'm saying. You're using the Switch as the gold standard. It is not. By far, it's not. My Legion Go runs some decent games. I think I've done a RPG RPG MMO game called Thorn and Liberty on it. It will run Battlefield, but I could tell that I'm lagging behind. It's not perfect, but it does launch the game. And Rita John says you gotta let it go, Cave, let it go. But the chipsets are getting stronger and more powerful, and when you end up doing that, guess what? Put it to you like this: have you ever been that type of person who's packed up your PlayStation or your Xbox or even your PC just so you can take it out of town with you? If you're that person and you've been that type of person, you want handhelds to actually succeed, because we're talking about more power in a smaller package. And the Legion Go, because I'm using that to do my speed testing videos also, because quote unquote it runs Windows. I don't have to do extra things to do my speed testing videos from. It literally runs Windows. So I can game, I can do my network testing on a handheld. I'm able to do a whole lot of little different things that I would not able to do where I would need a whole laptop to do. Now the handhelds are getting more powerful. Now, granted, it's going to take a couple more generations. I would say maybe by the third generation, games are going to end up running better on handhelds than they are as well as on PCs at a low level. Let's see. Rita John says, would you use a handheld with a MediaTek? If it's able to run, yes, I would. And I know that MediaTek has been rumored to end up being some Qualcomm phones coming up soon. So MediaTek is starting to make some moves. That's one of those things where you end up realizing that you can actually see the progression of technology going in a direction that I think is going to be good. And cloud gaming benefits from these handhelds becoming more advantageous to get. I mean, if the Nintendo Switch was a more open platform, it would dominate because it has more name recognition and game fare. But because it's locked to Nintendo, you're only going to get the hardcore fans. I mean, the more, like I said, the more people you able to get, the better, the bigger your footprint is going to become. Let's see. Rita John says the MediaTek 9400 is looking pretty impressive. Yes, it is. I haven't seen any benchmarks per se, but I know that the fact that Samsung might be even considering a MediaTek processor what says a lot. And then on top of that, you add the fact that Qualcomm has run into some problems of late. Let's see. What is it? MediaTek has some room to run if Qualcomm starts to stumble. And then Cave says, thoughts on the 5090 series. I have not seen any benchmarks. I'm probably going to end up waiting to see if Linus does some benchmark testing, but I would say this is going to probably end up being some incremental changes. A lot of games today except for like, let's say, Cyberpunk is the only one that I heard really push the boundaries of a 4090. So that was the only one that I know, the only game that I know of within the last, I say 2 to 3 years that actually push a 90 series that much. All right, so which I'm trying to figure out. I'm gonna do Comcast first, and then Google second. So Comcast is not looking so hot. The pressure of television has fallen upon one of the bigger cable companies a lot harder, and a consolidation is starting to happen. All right, so Comcast cable network spinoff may be a signal to the media industry for necessary change. So, if you have been living under a rock, if you have been just watching your beloved television with your antennas, you probably don't care. But for the cable codes, this has been a very trying time. It's been a very difficult time transitioning away from traditional television into the new media landscape that we find ourselves in. But Comcast is basically divesting itself of a lot of its television channels. They're doing a spinoff called Spinco. Basically, the long and short of it is they're taking a lot of the channels that they have created over the NBC Universal portfolio catalog, and they are merging them into a standalone entity. So it's away from their core business. Their core business is making money. Then with them expanding their fiber footprint, gaining new customers, that's making money. The television side is not making that much money in comparison. So I read this article. Let's see what the Comcast cable side that's not without the television side has made like 116 billion, but the television side with it dwindling is at 7 billion. So let's see. Reader John, you are a funny guy, sir. He says, I heard Elon Musk is thinking about buying MSNBC. Well, I mean, I don't try to go political, but I would like to see that happen. It would just be interesting and funny to watch. Very interesting and funny to watch at the same time. But I don't think he's going to do it. But Kate says not happening. But when it comes to the television side, we have seen the Comcasts and the Charters and other cable companies literally start downsizing. I mean, we watched AT&T divest itself of Time Warner, not Time Warner, but of Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers and Discovery got together, which this might be something that might be coming down the pipeline. As I was reading this article, let me see if I can find it in the context, because I didn't think of this, but this does make a lot of sense. But basically, if they're able to successfully spin this off, you could see a Time Warner Discovery Spinco setup where they become a huger entity. Because I mean, basically, they need to kind of get a lot of these bad investments off of their books. AT&T did that because television was dragging them down. Every single time there was a bad quarter, it made the whole AT&T suffer. And no, I'm not giving stock advice. This is just understanding that signals from everywhere give you signals that you need to look for. So that's my disclaimer. I'm not giving any stock advice, but looking at stock pricing and movement, AT&T was fluctuating until they spun off their television portion. Comcast might end up seeing that and deciding to do the same. So we can end up seeing a spin code, which they said they will end up being a publicly traded company, probably team up with a Discovery Warner setup where they become a bigger entity and survive that way. I mean, they need to start doing something that stops hemorrhaging the bleeding, which is one of the reasons why you're starting to see these old television companies start merging together. They're chopping off their limbs and sticking together their own Frankenstein, basically. That's what you're actually starting to see now. I mean, even Discovery got rid of their downtown office in downtown Silver Spring here in the DC metro area just to downsize. They were down there for years. I think they had built that building in downtown Silver Spring for themselves. And then for them to all of a sudden just abandon it because they just needed to downsize more says something about the television industry as a whole. Let's see, John says Comcast will be smart to let go of their TV assets. And I think so, but it does put a lot of uncertainty into what a new entity will end up becoming. And then he also says, oh yeah, that was from another comment. But I just think that when it comes to the television landscape, we're seeing a lot more shakeup. You know, Disney was the last company to actually try to bully a lot of the cable companies into submission. We're not really seeing a lot of that happening of late because I don't think that they know exactly where they want to stand. NBC Universal is not even adding a lot of their channels into this bundle. They're keeping some channels. I think they're keeping Bravo, which is their reality TV arm. So Bravo is not moving over into the whole SpinCo, and I think a couple of other entities are not. And Jim says he's back. Welcome back, sir. Welcome back. Welcome back. But Comcast, I would say this is one of those bellwethers that you really have to look at and pay attention to, and just so we can see which direction the industry is actually going in. So I'll keep reporting the news. Let's see. Now, the Fiesta Resistance. Let's see, Reader John. Investors are looking at organizations to be learning and money making machines right now. I agree. I mean, here's the thing. It's one of those things where the old guard is dying, but it doesn't want to die off yet. Television has changed. I mean, look, if anybody watched a fight, and I know Cade, I know you watched it on Netflix. If you didn't, I don't know what to say because you love UFC, so I know you love boxing too. But anybody that doesn't see the direction that we're going in, look at Netflix. Netflix is trying to do live television. So I mean, look, these things are what is starting to manifest itself. We're starting to see different new changes, which is a good thing. I think this is a good thing. All right, so now where is that article at? PC Gamer. All right, so if you've been once again another major shakeup in the tech community has gone down. Let's pull this one up. So Google to sell Chrome and be banned from re-entering the browser market for 5 years, recommended U.S. Department of Justice. So if you are not quite sure what's been going on in the back end, Google has been in a very, very, very strange fight. And if you don't quite know what's going on, I'm gonna give you the rundown real quick. So Google got basically reported to the DOJ for bad practices in the market, quote unquote, the in search, in the browsing, and possibly Android. So these are some of the major things that Google does dip their hands into. But Google and Chrome are in a very weird spot. And I think they learned their lesson from Microsoft. They're a juggernaut because I use Chrome. I primarily use Chrome on a lot of my products. I mean, it's one of the better ones. I could use Firefox, but I don't see Firefox being very good. And then when it comes to search, who's really using DuckDuckGo? Come on, tell me. You can put in the comments below what search engine are you really using. If you're a DuckDuckGo fan, I'm not here to insult you, but you know that it's not going to be as robust. I've used Bing before. This is a safe space. You could say which search engine you've used. If you're a Bing fan, that's fine. I don't ridicule you, but it's not good. So part of the problem is that Google became too much of a giant. And because Google became too much of a giant, the DOJ got involved, and pretty much they're advocating for Google to basically have Chrome yanked from them, and probably Android itself also. But I think that they put protections in place. So the long and short of it is they got too big and they dominate so much where they got to the place where they can try to keep other entities from jumping in. Like on the iPhone. Take that one for example. And of course, the DOJ actually used as an example. Google pays billions of dollars to Apple to be the primary search engine on iPhones. You can say that is anti-competitive. So let's see. Justin Tech, how you doing? Let's see. Come on, man. I use Chrome because it has my password manager built in and no need to copy and paste. I agree with you on that one. Edge and bloat and populated versions of Chrome. See, that's the beauty of Chrome is actually more open source. It's just that the part that Google does is their version, a more curated version. The Chromium project is open source. Like, what is it? Edge is Chromium. Edge is Chromium. I think even Opera, like Cave just said, Opera, I think has Chrome bits and pieces in it. Firefox, I think Firefox uses some Chromium extensions, but I haven't used Firefox in a long time. But the problem is being like it'd be different if Apple said, "Hey, it to be on the search, be a validated search engine, you have to cross this bar." But no, Google was paying for exclusivity, billions of dollars for being exclusive on the iPhone, which calls for quote unquote unfair practices. So these things are what ends up getting you in front of the DOJ. Microsoft in 2001 had got their hands slapped because of Internet Explorer being the dominant carrier on Windows. And I think Google learned from that, which is probably why they might not push back against this, being the fact that Chrome and the Chromium project is more in place, just like Android is in place, because they are also looking to try to get a hold of Android and probably yanking it from Google also. So let's see. Justin says, not everything loads. Oh, I lost track. Not everything loads in Firefox. Some websites just won't work. See? Now, is that Chrome's fault or is that Firefox's fault not making their websites more, what's that standard? It used to be what is it? It's been so long. But Apple got away from it. I'm trying to think now. I'm trying to think on the fly too. That's crazy. But Flash, that's what it was. Flash was primarily the biggest user across everybody, but then Apple said no more, and then everybody else ran to HTML5, and nobody's looked back. So, is this a problem that Google foresaw in the future and possibly was trying to get around by making it a open source project? And maybe they might end up setting that up as a limb to get cut off, but they know that it's still going to be supported because they're talking about selling it off. Let's see. Jim says, I use, what is that you use? Micro to create my own websites. I'm not sure what the name of that is, but you use a different website to make your websites. But this is going to be a very interesting problem to end up seeing, because and understand this is where it's starting to pile on. I think that people actually see Google hurt. And you could probably say that as long as the DOJ doesn't touch search, but they want to get their hands into search also. Because they want to crack up Google's monopoly in search. Now, you could say Chrome facilitated Google's monopoly in search because they gave a good web browser that actually is usable. But it's floating around now that because Google is going to probably have to sell off Chrome, guess who might end up grabbing it? ChatGPT. And ChatGPT has actually been looking to try to take Google head on now. I mean, you're starting to see the new battle between ChatGPT in Google's AI engine called Gemini. I'm trying not to trigger the new trigger word if I can. Let's see. But I think that even Samsung, I think even Samsung is starting to see kinks in the armor and floundering around as of late. Because let's see, here's the ChatGPT article. Pull this one up. So OpenAI reportedly in talks with Samsung to bring AI capabilities to Galaxy devices. So with Google basically with their hands tied and the DOJ watching their every move, OpenAI is looking to make moves. So you might end up having a new search engine coming up. No more DuckDuckGo for some people, or maybe even Bing or OpenAI is working on their search capabilities. And you already see on my Samsung device, I see that I think that what you end up seeing a lot more competitions coming into the space. I think that it's going to be one of those that is going to have a bigger ramification for more competition in the space. That's just me. I think that Samsung has been dying to have somebody other than them having to deal with Google. It's been kind of like a love-hate relationship. If you've been watching this, Samsung has been doing weird things where that every little thing that Google does, Samsung will copy it on their phones. They've kind of stopped doing that. And I guess that now they can end up basically paying for space on their phones. But let's see here. And Jim says Google copies everybody. No, Google crawls on everybody's websites. There's a difference. But the funny thing is the web is not being as open as it used to anymore. The web is closing off. I'm starting to run into a lot more paywalls, especially when I'm doing research about tech stories. So we're starting to see a lot more. We're starting to see a lot more dead ends, which is kind of bad because some stories I really want to read, I'm not able to. So let's see. Justin says also, Keon, in the past 2 months, I got AT&T 5G Home Air, and it works fantastically. Using it right now, 600 to 700 megabits down and 40 or so up. That's pretty good. Now the question is this: on the cellular end, what's the speeds look like? Because they're obviously doing fixed wireless, and I'm curious to see if the cellular side is taking a hit. If you have an AT&T line, I would love to see that per se, because the offer is 600 to 800 down and 40 up, but without, if it's just a dedicated standalone fixed wireless versus them offering it through their back end services, kind of like what T-Mobile and Verizon are doing, which is like an add-on. I'm going to assume that it's part of their network. So I want to soon be able to try to go out to different places different other states, different other municipalities, and test networks that way too. I'm close to being monetized on YouTube, so uh, once that ends up happening, I want to start taking some trips and looking at networks abroad, maybe even across the sea. I would love to see what it looked like, in different, like in Europe, and how they ended up doing it in the UK. Let's see. Reader John says Starlink will be the best in the near term. Starlink has promise, but not as much promise you might think. I mean, with everybody trying to go cellular from space, it's going to come down to how much data do you use. But even Starlink put restrictions on where you can use it at. You can't, like, you can roam around, but you can't use it in wide open water. Like if you're in the ocean, let's say you're in the middle of the ocean, you can't really use it. They turn it off. That you would need a whole new service plan just to use it on a ship. Let's see. Justin says they turn on 5G Plus in the area. It's on the regular network. I got about the same on my phone. The modem has better antennas. Both my iPhone 13 Pro and Pro Max. Oh, that's nice. Now the question is have you done a speed test at the same time where you hit speed test and your phone speed test at the same time and see which one takes precedence? I'm going to assume that they probably will end up giving more priority to the phone than they would the fixed wireless, because T-Mobile does that where the fixed wireless takes second fiddle to the overall network. So I'm curious about that. And Jim says Starlink sucks, along with Elon. But I mean, I think Starlink and the idea behind Starlink is cool. I think that sometimes the mouthpiece behind the company is too much of a mouthpiece from time to time. And Justin says he's in Massachusetts. See, I would love to come to Massachusetts and try out the networks there and see what it looked like. Well, y'all are talking tonight. Justin says no, I haven't yet. I have to try that tomorrow. All right, bet. All right, so I got one more last story. And I know I'm probably going to get laughed at by Cade, but it's a bittersweet in. Here we go. Because this is all that dog piling that's happening with Google, which is the culminating into a end of an era. So, the end of Chrome OS. Somebody pour out one for my dead homie. So the end of Chrome OS is a new dawn for cheap Android laptops. Now, if you follow Chrome, and people were asking Sundar Pichai, why are you running Chrome and Android separately? But with they shared a lot of different little things. I've had a Chromebook. I've had a couple of Chromebooks. I migrated away from Chrome and I went strictly to Windows again. So one of the biggest problems was one, it seemed like Google wasn't focused. That was number one. Number two, because it seemed like Google wasn't focused, they were trying to make two operating systems work together, even though the underlining of them were virtually the same. They were still based off Linux. But the problem is you were operating two separate operating systems at the same time. And now that Chrome seems to be going away, because once they rip Chrome away from Google, the Chrome OS is going to go right along with it. And more than likely, they'll probably end up folding it into Android or an Android-like situation. Android has all the apps. I mean, if you had Chrome in like the early days, like I had a Chromebook, the problem you ran into was there was no applications. And then they slowly started introducing applications to it. Let's see. Justin says, I have a coworker and just use Dex for his home desktop setup. I do that too. When I want to just view things that's on my phone, I dock it in my dock in my bedroom, and then bam, I have a full desktop. I don't have to come out here and grab my laptop to put in my bedroom. It's been one of those things where Samsung solved the problem for Google, but Google never decided to want to do something about it or do something with it. These things are some of the weird things that you start seeing with Google and not really taking it seriously. So we're looking at the death of Chrome OS possibly coming up. You know, with Apple taking a very huge lead in the ARM race. Sorry for the pun. In the ARM processor race, you run into the problem that Apple could end up being a very dominant force running at very low margins. I mean, the processors are coming down. I mean, the M2 is not a slouch of a processor. Hold up, let's see. I have a desktop. It's built in an iMac from 2010. That's what John just said. So Apple at this current pace and time, ARM processors are the way of going. It's only a matter of time before x86 dies. And then I think that Google is going to have to consolidate the whole, I would say, desktop. And if they don't end up doing this, they're going to get lapped, because Windows is on the horizon also. With Windows on ARM, Google is the only one that's not making their operating system viable. They're kind of stuck in the past. And then Justin says Google needs to adopt Dex or something similar for Pixel phones. I agree. I agree with that. But look, I mean, I think that something like Dex is something where Samsung has developed it, and I don't think that they can do anything like that. They could possibly do something, but I don't think that Google is focused enough. It requires a company to be focused, and I think that sometimes when companies get too big, they don't have enough focus to go, hey, look, this is the direction we want to go in. This is where we want to head off into. So we're watching the death and the end of Chrome OS. But that's about it this evening. Thank y'all for sitting around the campfire of tech news. Thank y'all for watching. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more antics in tech bunkfoolery. But also, if you want to get a hold of the channel, like I said in the entrance of my podcast, You can at me at Keon81 on Twitter, and at the channel also. If you have a story that you want, that I might overlook. There's some things that I like to read, but I can't read everything. So if you have a story that you want to come up on stage and be presented, and please be serious. I'm going to read these things. So don't go find the Stadia Needs to Die from 5 years ago. I've already read it. I already read all those. Okay. So that's talking to UK, because I know that you probably would end up doing that. But for the most part, if you got something you want me to read, add it the channel. Both, I think it's called Community Tech C1 on Twitter, and then it's at Keon81 on Twitter. So it's to contact me on X/Twitter is in the description below, and then link it to both of those, and I most definitely will see it because it will ping my phone. But also, if you want to get behind the scenes, you want to join the community and be a part of the growing channel, hopefully, you can always become a member and be on the memberships and get special access. You can look that up. I leave that to everybody else, what you decide to want to do. And also, working forward, super chat, super thanks is another way. So those are the 3 different ways. I would like to say thank y'all again for another week, and looking forward to next. Y'all have a good one.